few television shows have perplexed me as much as Yellowstone. A show seemingly loved by both critics and fans for being a compelling neo-Western drama. It felt like when this show first came out, everyone wouldn't shut up about it. People were talking about how great the action was, or the pretty scenery, or how nice Beth's tits are. And I have to agree that this show is definitely high production quality, and yeah, Beth's boobs are nice to look at. However, I can't help but feel that this is all a way to distract you from how god-awful and stupid the show actually is. And you may be wondering what I mean by stupid. Like, is the plot stupid? Yes. Are the characters stupid? Also yes. Are you stupid for liking the show? Not really. You see, the show uses all these flashy items to make people think that it's a quality television program. There's drama, famous actors, and lots of money behind it. But once you boil it all down, it's basically a pair of sweatpants. I mean, it might be nice and comfy, but it is lazy. So let's begin this dissection and look at some of the reasons why Yellowstone is a hunk of crap. Although I'm only going to discuss Season 1 because that's all I could get through. Number 1. Rip Wheeler, the Bear Slayer. Okay, so Episode 7 begins with John Dutton discovering a group of Chinese tourists on his land and admiring a grizzly bear. Naturally, he gets pretty pissed off by this and tries to get the tourists to leave. However, the tour guide acts like a total asshole and pretty much tells Dutton to get lost. She also informs him that apparently Chinese people can't conceive of the idea of owning property.
They don't believe you.
What?
Says that it's wrong for one man to own all this. He says you should share it with all the people.
Yeah. This is America. We don't share land here.
After some arguing, he finally manages to both scare off the bear and the Chinese people. Now, why would a tour group randomly wander onto private property? Why would they get that close to a grizzly bear? Why would they not immediately leave once a man with a gun shows up? Why was the bear acting super passive in this scene, but is super aggressive later on? All good questions, my darlings. However, the answer is to shut up and not think about it. Okay, so after dealing with the tourists, John asks his right-hand man, Rip, to kill the bear. So as Rip is hunting the grizzly bear, he discovers that a couple of tourists had returned to the ranch at some point, got frightened by the grizzly bear, and somehow managed to climb down the cliff to get away from it. Rip tries to save them by throwing down some rope. However, the Chinese people also can't conceive of the idea of one person using the rope at a time, so the chick falls to her death. Then, her boyfriend does a suey-wooey, while Rip watches. While this is all happening, the grizzly bear returns and charges at Rip, but he's able to kill it just in time.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Oh my god, this show sucks so fucking bad it makes my brain hurt. Alright, well this is a good example of how everything falls apart the moment you start to actually think about the plot. There are too many random acts of crazy violence in this show. Insane shit is just happening to the characters all the time for little to no reason. Of course, Rip is hunting a grizzly bear, and as if that wasn't enough, he also watches two people fall to their deaths, just before he nearly gets mauled by the bear himself. It's such a random, out-of-place moment in the plot that it actually completely pulls me out of the scene, as it feels so oddly disconnected from everything else. On its own, a showdown with the grizzly bear should be enough to keep the audience invested. If they wanted to, they could have easily made the scene more dramatic by putting Rip at some kind of disadvantage. Like maybe his horse gets scared by the bear and it bucks him. Maybe his gun misfires or he's injured just before facing the grizzly bear. But randomly inserting these idiotic tourists that kill themselves is way too much. What makes it feel even more disjointed is that the tourist deaths have no impact on the rest of the plot. When the police arrive in the next episode and interrogate Rip about what happened, they hardly focus on the tourists at all. They seem way more concerned about the dead grizzly bear than anything else.
What a fucking mess, John.
I think these tourists should learn the wilderness isn't a theme park.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that. I gotta get an agent up here from Fish and Wildlife. That's a federal offense. What's the ETA on wildlife?
Rip himself doesn't give a shit about them either. He just goes back to the ranch to pout about Beth banging some other guy. So what was the purpose of these random deaths? If the main characters, police officers, and plot seem to ignore it altogether, then why should the audience do any differently? On another note, it makes the audience question the logic of the show. Now, I'm assuming that this couple was in the same tour group that we saw at the beginning of the episode. So let me get this straight. This couple was scared away by a guy with a gun and decided that it was a good idea to come back to his property on their own? There are national parks in Montana that they could visit without provoking anyone. Why the fuck do they need to come back here? Are they so stupid that they thought nothing would come of it? Or are they so arrogant of landowning that they didn't think anything was wrong with the idea? Number 2. Casey is the unluckiest man on the planet. If you still don't believe me when I say that this show is just a series of random events, then why can't Casey drive down the fucking road without some kind of insane thing happening?
I was the one.
So not only does this house explode just as Casey happened to be driving by, but then he also finds the only survivor who is severely burned. Casey, of course, has to execute him. And if that's not crazy enough, in the very next episode, while he's driving with his son, Casey notices a van parked on the side of the road. For some reason, he decides to go investigate and finds a woman tied up in the back with 2 men in gas masks. He kills one of them, but the other one gets away. To protect his kid, I guess, he puts him in a cauldron underneath the road and drives off after them. There's a long chase scene, and eventually he kills the guy and saves the girl. While all of this is happening, his son is attacked by the most incompetent rattlesnake in the world, but kills it by stepping on it a few times. Do I really need to? Oh. Fuck, whatever. I guess I have to ask, what the fuck is this? Why? Why is there no motivation in this scene besides character sees van on the side of the road and decides to investigate? All the writers had to do to make this scene feel more natural was insert another scene previously that stated that the girl had gone missing in the area. Like maybe the sheriff shows up asking questions like if Casey had seen the girl before. Maybe the sheriff could have even said that the girl had gone missing around a white van, and to call the police if he ever saw something suspicious like that. So when Casey is driving by and sees the white van, then the audience and the characters could be like, oh yeah, there's that van that the girl had been taken in. It would have also given Casey a reason to go look at what's inside the van. I mean, like, does this guy just go around checking all of the abandoned vehicles on the side of the road?
Like the dumbest motherfucker that ever lived.
So instead of this completely random event happening, there's a bit of a lead up and plot development before it actually happens. On a side note, usually when I kidnap women, I park my suspicious van more than 5 feet away from the road so that any random hick can walk up and see what's inside. You know, try to be more discreet when I'm committing a felony. Maybe go out into the middle of nowhere, like a forest or a canyon or something.
I would get the lady in the van and I would drive her to a remote area. An area most known for its remoteness. That's what I would look for. And anyways, I'd take her to the remote area where I had constructed a shed. And then I would get her in there and I would do that thing that makes me feel like God. And,
Anyway, what was I saying? There seems to be an emerging formula here. You have a character dealing with an unusual but already intense situation, while simultaneously there's another completely random and chaotic event happening. You know the old saying, less is more? You don't need to keep lathering on crazy events to get the viewers hooked in the scene. I mean, sure, it works in the moment because of the shock value, but it's all meaningless if it doesn't move the plot forward. A lot of RPG games use the idea of random encounters. The idea being that in an open world setting, the players have to run around the map completing missions and quests. But in between these objectives, the players have a lot of downtime. So to stop the players from getting bored, the creators will make some random situations that the player will have to be confronted by to maintain their interest in the game. For example, say you're a cowboy riding down a country road. All of a sudden, a man appears from the woods with a snake bite and asks you to suck out the venom. So you do it, and you save his life. Then you get back on your horse, and you keep riding towards the objective marker on your map. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the main story, and it really doesn't have much of a consequence on the overall game. But it stops the long ride between objectives from getting too dull. Now, this works in a game because it fills the empty space in the action. However, this idea doesn't play out so well in a TV show because, well, for one, it's not a video game. The writers shouldn't have to fill the viewer's time because there's nothing else going on in the story. You can't have action for the sake of action. You have to have organic situations, plot structure, meaning, and compelling reasons for the characters to be in those situations. Video games can have random encounters because it's happening to the player. Their interest and involvement is innate to the gaming experience. With cinema, the audience is observing the narrative, and therefore it requires more of an emotional hook to maintain any real investment. However, the writers of Yellowstone seem to think that simply inserting action into any slow moment in the story is entertaining. The writers of South Park do a really good job of breaking down how plot structure should work.
We can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, you're f***ed, basically. You got something pretty boring. What should happen between every beat that you've written down is either the word "therefore" or "but," right? So what I'm saying is that you come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No, it should be this happens, and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens. So many scripts we read from new writers and things that we see.
God, I see movies. You see movies that you're just watching. It's like this happened, and then this happens, and then this happens. That's when you're in a movie just going, what the f*** am I watching this movie for?
As you can see, Yellowstone is a and then story. Casey is driving with his bitchy wife, and then the house explodes. Casey is driving with his retarded son, and then comes across a kidnapper's van. There is no therefore in these plot lines, and it makes it all feel loose and weird. Now to bring my point back full circle, all of this brings one word to mind: compensation. The writers have a difficult time creating a real and compelling drama, so they fill the screen with over-the-top events. Everything in this show is turned up to 11. The dialogue, the emotions, the action, and so on is all brought to the extremes. People are always punching each other, or threatening each other, or watching them fall to their deaths. Fuck, you can't even pump your gas in this show without starting a fistfight. Yet despite all of this excitement, Yellowstone still manages to bore me because I can't connect with the actual story.